a tragic royal scandal, a mysterious death, and a secret that shook the very foundations of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. What really happened on that cold January night in 1889 at the Mayerling hunting lodge? Crown Prince Rudolf, heir to the Habsburg throne, was found dead alongside his young mistress, Baroness Mary Vetsera, in what was quickly labeled a murder-suicide. But for over a century, historians, conspiracy theorists, and even members of the royal family have questioned the official story. Was it really a desperate lover's pact, or was there something much darker at play? Political intrigue, royal betrayal, and perhaps even murder? In this video, we will unravel the shocking events leading up to that fateful night, exploring the forbidden love affair, the secrets hidden behind palace walls, and the lingering mysteries that refuse to fade. What was Crown Prince Rudolf running from? Why was the imperial court so desperate to suppress the truth? And could this scandal have altered the course of European history? Stay with me as we deep dive into one of the most chilling and controversial cases in royal history, the Mayerling Incident. It's important if we want to understand the Mayerling incidents, we first have to take a step back into the world of 19th century European royalty, a world of unimaginable luxury, rigid hierarchy, and absolute power. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, ruled by Emperor Franz Joseph I, was one of the largest and most powerful empires in Europe, stretching across modern-day Austria, Hungary, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Croatia, parts of Italy, Romania, Poland, and Ukraine. The imperial family lived in staggering opulence, their wealth dwarfing even today's billionaires. The Hofburg Palace in Vienna, their winter residence, had over 2,600 rooms. I repeat, 2,600 rooms, while Schönbrunn Palace, their summer retreat, boasted 1,441 rooms. I come again, 1,441 rooms. Adjusted for inflation, the Habsburgs' estimated wealth would be worth well over 200 billion US dollars today, comparing to the net worth of figures like Elon Musk or Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince and prime minister of Saudi Arabia. Of course, during those days, Habsburgs controlled an empire, not just businesses. But their wealth wasn't just measured in gold and land, it was measured in power, which some of the billionaires want today, of course. The Habsburgs ruled over nearly 52 million people, controlling politics, military decisions, and even personal freedoms within their vast empire. The royal court dictated everything, from who could marry whom to how people dressed, reinforcing strict social divisions. Aristocrats lived in excess, hosting lavish balls where guests adorned themselves in diamonds and silks, while the working class toiled in factories and fields, barely scraping by. Against this backdrop of grandeur and inequality, Crown Prince Rudolf, heir to this enormous empire, was born into privilege, but also into suffocating expectations. And those expectations would ultimately lead to his tragic fate. Who was Crown Prince Rudolf? What do we know about him? From the moment Crown Prince Rudolf was born in 1858, his life was not his own. As the only son of Emperor Franz Joseph I and Empress Elizabeth, better known as Sissi, he was expected to carry the weight of the empire on his shoulders. But unlike his strict conservative father, Rudolf was naturally curious, intelligent, and deeply fascinated by liberal ideas that clashed with the rigid traditions of the Habsburg court. His upbringing was cold and militaristic. At just 6 years old, he was taken from his mother and placed under the harsh supervision of military tutors who believed affection would make him weak. Imagine being a child in a palace with golden chandeliers everywhere and lavish banquets, yet never knowing a warm embrace from your parents. That was Rudolf's reality. Despite this strict upbringing, Rudolf's mind flourished in secret. He was a voracious reader, devouring books on science, politics, and philosophy, unusual for a Habsburg prince who was expected to follow orders, not question them. He spoke multiple languages, including German, Hungarian, French, and English, and he admired progressive thinkers who criticized the very monarchy he was destined to inherit. But this intellectual independence came at a cost. His father saw him as weak, his ideas as dangerous, and his role in the empire as a disappointment. As Rudolf grew older, he realized that no matter how brilliant he was, he would never truly be free. And this deep growing conflict between duty and personal beliefs, between the life he wanted and the one he was forced into, would ultimately set the stage for his tragic end. As the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, Rudolf's love life was never his own to control. Marriage for royals wasn't about romance, it was a political transaction, a way to forge alliances and secure power. At 21, he was pressured into marrying Princess Stephanie of Belgium, a match orchestrated by his father. From the start, the relationship was cold and distant. Rudolf, a free-thinking intellectual, had little in common with the conservative and dutiful Stephanie. Worse still, he quickly lost interest in her, finding their marriage stifling and unfulfilling. He turned to affairs for excitement, but one in particularly had lasting consequences. Before marrying Stephanie, Rudolf had been involved with Michy Kaspar, a well-known Viennese courtesan. Their affair lasted years, and it's believed that during this time Rudolf contracted syphilis, a disease that he then unknowingly passed to his wife. Imagine the betrayal Stephanie must have felt, entering into a royal marriage only to have ended a lifelong illness by her unfaithful husband. At that time, syphilis was a slow and humiliating death sentence, leading to open sores, paralysis, blindness, dementia, and eventually a painful decline with no cure in sight. But Rudolf's downward spiral didn't end there. Isolated from his father, trapped in a marriage he resented, and battling illness and addiction, he craved a deeper escape. That's when he met Baroness Mary Vetsera, a 17-year-old noblewoman whose infatuation with the troubled prince would lead to one of the history's greatest scandals. Unlike the carefully selected princes of European courts, Mary was young, rankless, and dangerously devoted to Rudolf. Their relationship was a secret whispered through palace corridors, a forbidden romance that defied royal expectations. But as Rudolf's personal struggles deepened, his political frustrations, his battles with addiction, and his growing despair, his relationship with Mary took a dark and tragic turn. It was no longer just an affair, it became a desperate escape plan, and this fateful love story would soon come to its infamous, chilling conclusion at Mayerling. Let's deep dive who Mary Vetsera was. Baroness Mary Vetsera was born in 1871 into one of the oldest noble families in Austria. Though her life was far from the fairy tale many might imagine for someone of her stature. Raised in a world of privilege, Mary was the daughter of a wealthy Austrian nobleman and a mother who has highly connections in royal circles. However, despite her noble birth, Mary's childhood was not marked by the kind of royal indulgence one might expect. Her family struggled financially, and as she grew older, her life became less about the grandiosity of aristocracy and more about the connection she could make within the social elite. In the eyes of Austrian court, she was an attractive young woman, but it was her fiery spirit and insatiable longing for adventure that drew her into the tangled web of royal politics. It was during a grand ball that Mary, just 17-year-old, first caught the eye of Crown Prince Rudolf, who was 30 at that time. Though she came from an established noble family, Mary's presence at the ball was far more than just a societal event. She was to the prince a breath of fresh air in a world of cold formality. As the night unfolded, the two exchanged glances, and it wasn't long before their conversations grew into private meetings. For Rudolf, who had been suffocating under the weight of his royal duties and failing marriage, Mary offered a glimpse of freedom, a chance to escape from the chains of responsibility. For Mary, the prince represented the very world of power and influence she had always dreamed of being part of. The allure was irresistible. The affair between the 30-year-old Rudolf and the 17-year-old Mary quickly grew intense, becoming a forbidden romance that would shake the very foundations of the Habsburg court. Mary's feelings for the prince were overwhelming, and soon her obsession deepened into something far more dangerous, a desire not just for his love, but for a life beyond the royal expectations that suffocated him. To her, their connection was a love affair like no other, a passionate rebellion against the constraints of their world. For Rudolf, she was the escape he had been longing for, a young, uninhibited spirit who reminded him of everything he was missing in his royal life. But as their secret meetings became bolder and their love grew more intense, so did the stakes. In their pursuit of forbidden love, they had no idea how quickly their story would spiral into one of the history's most tragic and mysterious endings. On the night of January the 30th, 1889, the Mayerling hunting lodge stood quiet, tucked away in the dense woods outside Vienna. Inside, Crown Prince Rudolf and his young lover, Baroness Mary Vetsera, were alone together in a room that would soon become the site of one of the history's most infamous tragedies. What exactly happened that night remains a mystery, but it's clear that this was no ordinary moment of royal drama. Perhaps the two lovers, bound by their shared struggles and longing for freedom, found themselves in a place of desperation. Maybe the weight of their forbidden love, the secrecy, and the pressures of their lives had become too much to bear. In that dark night, in that dark room, they might have decided together that the only escape was to end it all. But what led them to this fateful choice? Was it love? Was it despair? Or something darker? The answers have remained hidden in the shadows ever since, leaving only questions and theories about what truly happened behind those closed doors. After the deaths of Crown Prince Rudolf and Baroness Mary Vetsera, the royal court scrambled to hide the true cause of what had happened. At first, they tried to tell the public that Rudolf had died from heart disease, a condition he supposedly struggled with for some time. But this story didn't sit well with everyone, especially since Mary was found dead with him. People quickly began to question what really happened. The royal family quickly sealed off the Mayerling hunting lodge and made sure only a small circle of people knew the real story. They hoped to keep the scandal hidden, but rumors of a tragic and mysterious death began to spread far beyond the palace walls. Weeks later, the royal family released the official version of events. They said that Rudolf and Mary had tragically taken their own lives at Mayerling on January the 30th, 1889. According to the official story, Rudolf, overwhelmed by his personal troubles, shot himself, and in her grief Mary followed him in heartbreaking acts of love and loyalty. The royal family insisted it was a private matter, a result of the young prince's emotional struggles. While this version was accepted by many at the time, the public still had many unanswered questions, and the official story didn't certainly explain all the details, and thus the people were left feeling skeptical. Despite the royal family's efforts to put an end to the rumors, many rejected the official version and came up with their own theories about what really happened. One of the most popular ideas is that Rudolf didn't die by suicide at all, but was murdered. Some people believe that Rudolf's growing political views and frustration with his royal duties made him a target for powerful people within the royal family, or maybe even the government. These groups, fearing that Rudolf's ideas could change the balance of power in the empire, might have seen him as a threat and arranged his death. Some believe that Mary's death was staged to make it look like a suicide, keeping the focus off the real reason for Rudolf's death. Another theory suggests that the deaths were the result of a heated argument between Rudolf and Mary that went horribly wrong. According to this idea, the prince, frustrated with his troubled marriage and his passionate relationship with her, may have snapped in a moment of anger. Some believe that Rudolf, consumed by his emotions, could have killed Mary in a fit of rage and then ended his own life. Others argue that Mary, in her obsession with Rudolf, might have begged him to end their lives together, which led to a tragic and impulsive decision by the prince. This theory paints the deaths as a terrible accident driven by an out-of-control relationship, a passionate love. Finally, there is a theory that the deaths were part of a bigger plan to get rid of Rudolf and remove him from the throne. Some believe that the prince's health, especially his struggles with syphilis, was getting worse and affecting his mental state. This theory suggests that certain people within the royal family, possibly even his father, Emperor Franz Joseph, decided that Rudolf was too much of a liability. Fearing that Rudolf's condition could damage the reputation of the monarchy, they have planned his death and made it look like a suicide. This theory points to the way the royal family quickly shut down the investigation and released the official story as proof that they were covering something up. At the time of the Mayerling Incident, the Habsburg Empire was at the peak of its power. Emperor Franz Joseph I ruled over a vast and diverse empire, stretching from modern-day Austria to parts of Hungary, Italy, and the Balkans. His influence was absolute, and the royal family was held in the highest regard, with their every move closely watched and admired by the people. The court, made up of nobles and royal advisors, had the power to control the flow of information and keep royal secrets locked away. If the emperor wanted something kept hidden, it was kept hidden, no matter the cost. The death of his own son, Crown Prince Rudolf, was no exception. The royal family's reputation was everything, and the court would stop at nothing to protect it, even if it meant covering up the truth. One of the most shocking abuses of power came from the emperor when, actually, the emperor forbade Mary Vetsera's mother from visiting her daughter's body. After the deaths, Mary's family, understandably distraught, demanded to see her and make arrangements for her burial. But the royal family, fearing the scandal that could arise from any more attention, refused to let her mother see her daughter. Mary's body was quickly buried in an unmarked grave, and the royal court made sure her family stayed away. The royals' actions were not only cruel, but also deeply ironic. By trying to protect the royal family's image, they caused even more harm. They shut out a grieving mother, controlled the narrative, and buried the truth, all while preserving the appearance of a peaceful, stable monarchy. In the end, this abuse of power did nothing to protect them. Instead, it deepened the mystery, turning what could have been a private tragedy into a public spectacle that has captivated people for generations. When someone takes their own life, it often comes from a place of overwhelming pain or hopelessness. Studies show that people who commit suicide sometimes feel trapped, as though they see no way out of their emotional struggles or personal troubles. In Rudolf's case, the pressures of his royal duties, his failing marriage, and his political frustrations might have been too much for him to handle. His affair with Mary, which was full of passion but also deep turmoil, could have added to the emotional weight he was carrying. If Rudolf was struggling with depression combined with his deteriorating health from syphilis, it might have clouded his judgment, making him feel like there was no escape but death. Some believe he may have seen suicide as the only way to find peace, or perhaps he thought it was a way to escape the royal life that was suffocating him. In that desperate state of mind, he might have convinced Mary to join him, believing their love could only end in tragedy. For Mary, too, it was possible that her young age and intense feelings led her to see death as a way to stay connected to the prince she loved so deeply. As for Mary Vetsera, she was just 17, full of youthful dreams and longing for excitement when she met Crown Prince Rudolf. To a young girl, especially in those times, the idea of falling in love with a prince, someone powerful, mysterious, and unlike anyone she had ever known, was a fantasy come true. But Rudolf wasn't just any prince. He was an intelligent, charismatic man, and for Mary, his charm and the intensity of their secret love likely swept her off her feet. She had known rejection from society and her own family, and with Rudolf she found someone who made her feel seen, special, and important. It's easy to imagine how her emotions could have been amplified by the excitement of an affair that was both passionate and forbidden. Rudolf, who was much older and more experienced, had a strong influence over her, and perhaps he convinced her that their love was meant to be eternal. For a young girl in love, the thought of forever might have felt more real than the dangers surrounding them. The idea of dying together, of escaping a world that rejected them, might have seemed like a way to keep that love alive forever. Could she have made the decision to die because she was so deeply influenced by Rudolf? Let me know your thoughts in this matter. It's possible that his influence, combined with her youthful devotion, led her down a path that tragically ended in their shared death. The Mayerling Incident shocked Europe, causing a ripple effect through society that couldn't be ignored. The press, once careful not to cross the royal family, now found themselves in a frenzy of speculation. Newspapers all over Europe published wild theories, often exaggerating the details of the deaths. The public, hungry for answers, became more suspicious of the royal family's secrets. The once untouchable monarchy was now under a cloud of doubt. People started questioning the stability of the empire and whether the royal family was really as powerful and in control as they appeared. The tragic deaths of Rudolf and Mary Vetsera, hidden behind layers of royal protection, suddenly became a symbol of the deep cracks in a society that relied on image of perfection. Mary Vetsera's family, already in turmoil over the loss of their daughter, was left to cope with the public scandal that followed. Her mother, deeply devastated, struggled against the royal family's control over her daughter's burial and legacy. Mary's family was denied a chance to mourn her properly as the court buried her quickly in an unmarked grave, isolating her from her own family. The Vetseras were left in the dark about what really happened to their daughter, forced to watch as the royal family manipulated the story to fit their needs. As for the royal family, the scandal took a toll on their reputation. Despite the court's efforts to cover up the tragedy, the secret was out, and people began to see the royal family as a broken institution, just as vulnerable to emotional turmoil and scandal as anyone else. The Mayerling Incident would forever haunt the Habsburgs, leaving a dark shadow over the future of the monarchy. The Mayerling incidents also had a significant impact on the line of succession. With Crown Prince Rudolf's death, the future of the Habsburgs monarchy seemed uncertain. His tragic end meant that basically there was no more choices around. In this way, they had to adapt, and they needed to reform in one way or the other. Thank you very much for following this story with me, and thank you for considering subscribing. If you are still there by this time, I hope you know I appreciate you very much, since you are encouraging me to continue. I hope that you take care of yourself first, and I wish you a very good day or a good night. Bye.